Hey folks, my name's Kevin and it's time for a little bit more knife nerdery, and today we have an unboxing that I am super excited about, and I feel like I've been saying that a lot lately. And part of it is because I've managed to find some things in the secondary that I've been hunting for a really long time, and that's been really exciting. Part of it though is that I've had some really generous people send some stuff my way that I've gotten to experience as a result. And like a good example that's going to be really relevant is that that Trevor Burger LEXK that Kevin left EDC loaned me. And today I have another knife that he has sent me. And this is another just kind of like wild thing. I did a live stream with him last week, and at the end I kind of just mentioned in passing that of course I really wanted to try one of these, like everyone. And I thought it would be a knife that I would genuinely really like. And I woke up the next morning. He's on the East Coast time, so he's 3 hours ahead of me. I woke up the next morning to a video from him saying, hey, I sent my Rosie your way, included like 1,000 different kinds of bearings, because of course he did. And he sent a tracking number. And it's just one of those like, what? It's so freaking cool. Incredibly generous. I will say, I have to be kind of careful because I'm almost dangerously excited about this one. I'm trying to not let myself get too caught up in the hype on this, but I genuinely think this is going to be a knife that I will really like a really me kind of knife. And the people who are talking about it and the way they're talking about it is a different kind of hype. It's talking about, it's like, it's knife nerd people talking about the little details that make it interesting. So I am super excited to try this. For the unboxing knife, we are going to use the Quiet Carry Drift, because especially with the version that has a slot, I'll pop pictures up at some point, but this is a knife that a lot of people have compared this to. How do I open this? Still getting used to doing these kind of unboxings on this kind of camera setup. Oh, aha! So right off the bat, yes, this is from Lefty EDC. It comes in one of these little hard clamshell cases, and this is the same kind of case that like my my Brown Knives Cortex came in. It's I think the same kind of case that, for example, Norseman's come in, Grimsmo. And it adds, when you're buying an expensive knife, and these are expensive knives, it adds something to it when you feel like you're getting nice presentation. So that's really cool. Oh, I'm kind of nervous. Ooh. Okay. Yep. Wow, I can't believe I actually have one of these in hand right now. So this is the Oz Machine Company Roosevelt. And this is a knife that has been so talked about in the community. Okay, I'm just kind of floored. This is, I believe, number 158. Yeah, number 158. I don't know if that's going to be able to focus. And this is in what he calls the golf putter milling. And it's supposed to look like the bottom of a golf putter, like the front part, that kind of radial pattern that it does. And I think as milling patterns go, I think this is just gorgeous. It's got that kind of mesmerizing quality that is more, just more distinctive and more, less repetitive. As like kind of repetitive as it is, because it is consistent across. I find that a lot of knives that have just like straight lines or something like that to get a little bit, it blurs together and I don't really notice it. And so this having this radial thing is just, it's a much neater look. Okay, I think this clip is, I want to say it's Timascus, but I know he also works with Zircuti, and so I don't know what it is. But the thing that really blows my mind that I don't know how Daniel Osborne is doing is the colors he's getting out of this. I'm assuming from the look of it that this is heat anodized. I think it has to be. But he's getting greens and pinks and yellows in a way that you just don't normally see. You normally see, yellows, blues, purples, reds. But that green and pink, how the heck is he doing that? And I think it looks so nice with these green accents. And there's little stuff like, do you notice how this screw is anodized green as well? That's the screw that holds in the whole detent ball hardened lock steel insert plate. And that's a screw that's on the inside, to have that anodized. So size-wise, I'm really pleased with this so far already. And that's like, size-wise, it's exactly what I wanted it to be. I'm really nervous to flick this because... Okay. Okay. Oh my god! Holy shit! How is he doing that? It's got a crisp break. That's part of it. Like, it's definitely a really snappy thing there. That is insane. I've heard so many people talk about this as being the single best finger flicking knife. That's a pretty common... Whew, that's a pretty common description. And I think... I think they're right. I'm hesitant to make a claim like that so quickly, but holy shit. Holy crap, that is... Whoa. So this is a, I don't know, Z-finite? It's a trade name for LC200N. The blade is made out of LC200N, which means it is one of those essentially unrustable knives. And that's part of the reason why people make a comparison to this. I mean, the big reason, especially back when this had a cutout that was basically the same shape as this, the big reason is that they're just tremendously similar looking knives. They're different for sure, but they're tremendously similar looking. Again, especially when this had the cutout. But the fact that they both are effectively rust-proof, I don't think Daniel is making claims of that the same way, but this is titanium, LC200N, Timascus. Like, what on here would rust? I don't know. And of course, because Kevin is Kevin, he has put in every kind of bearing in the world in here. And so what's in here right now is taco bearings. And those are, I believe, brass and ceramic. I think they're the silicon nitride kind of ceramic. And the thing that makes those different, and the thing I guess that would be adding the one thing that might rust in this, is that taco bearings are, I believe, a little bit thinner than normal, but I'll have to check that. And they have a hardened steel plate. Because one of the things that the Roosevelt has, or does, like, that I guess I would ask to change, is it has bearings that just ride directly on the titanium. And I believe now he's using Delrins. He originally was using something non-custom, or I don't really know. I think they were just kind of more stamped kind. And anyway, when you have really, really, really hard material like silicon nitride rubbing up against a much, much, much softer material, titanium, for reference, is roughly kind of 40 HRC, and silicon nitride can be up above 80. So it's literally twice as hard. And when you have something twice as hard running on titanium, it can wear or track in a way that I honestly don't think it's going to matter that much. It's basically going to wear like a raceway in, but it's better if it's going against a harder surface. So taco bearings solve that by giving you a really, really hard flat washer. I looked to try and find hardened washers, and it's really hard because the vast majority of the washer market is the people shopping for that are looking for something that's corrosion resistant, and they don't care about hardness because it's a pretty specific use case to want hardness. Okay, one of the things that I was really interested in is this finger toil, because again, we've got a finger choil here. But one of the things that I've always noticed on this finger choil is that the way that it's positioned means that a fair amount of this finger choil goes up into the blade, and this is such a thin blade that it means that a fair amount of this finger choil is thin. And it doesn't matter at all if you're pulling in a kind of a downward, backward motion, because this part is thick and you're pushing against that. But if for some reason, and again, this isn't really a big thing, but if you choke up really far and you end up pushing in kind of a forward motion, it means that your finger is pushing against this relatively thin blade bit right here, and it's just not the most comfortable in the world. And in pictures, I noticed that the finger choil on this appeared to be done kind of perfectly, because what you have is the entirety of the finger choil, almost the entire thing, is in this spot that the handle is in, which means your finger is pushing against this full width. And then up here, the full width of the blade stock comes all the way up to there. So even if you're pushing all the way forward, you're pushing against this flatter bit. And that feels so good. This is one of the best finger choils that I have felt maybe ever in a really long time. Size-wise, this does just fit so well. The ergonomics, I thought this would be a very me knife, and oh my god. So the one thing, if I was to make a perfect version of this for me, because of the kind of cutting I do, I love Wharncliffe's. So if he ever designs a sheep's foot or Wharncliffe blade, I think that would be a little bit more me. But I love how fine this tip gets up here, because you can do some really detailed work with that, I'm guessing. Blade shape-wise, I tend to prefer knives that have a little bit flatter and a little bit lower tip. And this is all belly. So this isn't my favorite blade shape in the world, but I do think it looks really nice. I think the swedge looks really nice. One thing I've always wondered about with swedge knives is I always wonder what it's going to feel like to put my finger all the way up the tip if I am trying to do detail work. And if I choke up super far like that, you can see my finger is on this. And yeah, I wouldn't want to put a ton of pressure on that, but especially because of the blade shape, this isn't really the kind of knife that I would use for that kind of super detailed utility cuts if I had other knives. I think you really easily could. One of the things, it feels so good. Okay, one of the things that I was really interested in about with this is this is one of the older ones where he was doing the lock bar pressure a little bit firmer. And I've heard from, I think, 5 or 6 different sources that have tried different ones, that he is tuning them to have lighter lock bar pressure these days. And by doing so, he is decreasing the detent strength. So he's going to make it a little bit less snappy. But the geometry here and the way that you're flicking up means that I think it's going to be the kind of knife that you could probably flick that open pretty easily without, well, can I do it? Yeah, you can flick that open pretty easily without any detent whatsoever. But the difference is by weakening the lock bar pressure, he's reducing the amount of pressure on the blade as it's going. So I hear that the newer ones fall shut just a little bit more, less shaking. I personally would rather have a really satisfying, really snappy deployment than have it be anything close to a guillotine. So to me, this is kind of perfect, because if I want to, it closes really easily. No. Yeah, it's that. What I just did there, I was barely flicking it. And it has this feeling. It has this feeling like it's just going to open no matter what. It feels almost assisted. That's bonkers. One of the big reasons why I really wanted to check out this isn't because of the hype around people saying it's so exciting and it has such good flicking action. I really, really am excited to look at what he's doing here with this double detent system, because this is odd. Very few people have 2 detents in a knife, and they're never done like this. I don't know of anyone else that's doing 2 detent balls in a row. And so what I've heard is the explanation, and I don't know, I could be wrong about this. What I've heard is the explanation is that he's using this to kind of act as a way of not needing a detent ball ramp, if you will, like, and not having that double click off. Because on most knives, what you'll have the first click when you fall off of the detent ball onto the tang, and then you'll have the second click when you fall off of the lock bar altogether and it goes up onto the lock face. And as a result, you get this kind of this 2-click thing. And what I'm told is that by putting that second detent ball there, it makes it so that, yeah, wow, that really works. You basically don't fall off of the detent ball until you're ready to go all the way off. And so, yeah, that's incredible. It means that you don't ever get that second click. It's just that, and it means that the engagement to detent is like immediate, because look at this. Like, this is fully open, and there's the detent ball. Like, it's really hard to put it at the edge there where it's not up onto the detent ball yet. And so this is a totally different way of accomplishing something that, like, the haptic and folks like that do with the detent nub, that ramp that goes all the way up, or like the Sebenza 31 uses the detent ball as the lock face. And so that means that the moment you're off of the lock, you're intrinsically on the detent ball. And this is a totally different way than either of that of accomplishing that same kind of thing. I can't wait to open it up. Kevin, of course, said that I am welcome to fully, as he put it, go ham, and I absolutely intend to. Whew. I don't know how I feel about this jimping. Like, this is one of my least favorite kinds of jimping, honestly. It's the really far spread out, really deep, kind of rounded out jimping, and it might work really well for gloves or something like that. But it's the kind of jimping that, with at least the way that my hands are, this doesn't really stop me from sliding very much. It just makes it a little bit uncomfortable. So if it were me, I would either get rid of this jimping altogether or change it to the kind that's more shallow and a little bit sharper. I have this one out still, and this is more the kind of jimping I like. It is closer together, it's very, very shallow, and it's crisp. And as a result, because it's so shallow, you can push your thumb on this as hard as you want, and it won't push into you because it's not deep enough to gouge in, but it's crisp enough that it makes my finger lock. And so for me, this works really well. And this, if I push on this, it feels like a bunch of little nubs pushing into my thumb. I don't love that. And if I try and slide on it, I do kind of just slide forward. So I don't think I love this jimping, but I will say I love the way that he has made the jimping lines perfectly line up with the handle lines. That is the kind of attention to detail that you find on knives from folks that really look closely and that really care. Another thing I'm really curious about is this. Ooh, that feels nice. A lot of times on knives, I find that they scrape. Ooh, no, that's perfect. I find that the inside track of holes like this tend to scrape my fingernail. And I have had so many knives shave little flecks of my fingernail off, but this feels great. And my guess is that that's because of, wow. And my guess is that's because of the stonewash. And usually that's honestly one of the reasons why I love a stonewash finish. I love a stonewash finish because it hides wear and it makes it so that I'm not nervous about using a knife at all. It's that it just takes away that apprehensiveness. And so I love that. But the other thing is that it knocks back these corners just enough that this means that it still feels crisp, but it doesn't scrape at all. It's not leaving any kind of marks on my fingernail. That is really, really nicely done. I traditionally can't thumb flick whole knives very well. And so I'm probably going to mess this up repeatedly. Okay, I just need to do it like that. No. Okay. Yeah, I'm really bad at thumb flicking. Yeah. I can do it, but honestly, if there's a hole in a knife like this, I'm never going to want to thumb flick it. Part of the reason is that I'm just not able to get my thumb in here, because since you can't really push up the same way you normally do, I have to hold it in a slight way a different way than I'm used to. It's not that it's anyway, and I don't get a super good grip, and so I feel like the knife kind of wobbles around on me, and that's partly what I'm doing. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. Point is if I have a knife that has a hole like this, I'm gonna finger flick it anyway, and that is so good. Yeah, it's really interesting the way it almost feels assisted. It just has this, you know, the way an assisted knife, you can tell that it's going to open. There is zero sense that it's slowing down and that it might not. It feels almost like it's propelled forward because it literally is propelled forward, but you can feel that. And that, I'm getting that feeling from this, which is really nuts. And especially because, like, this is a reasonably tight lock bar, and this is smooth, quite, but not like the smoothest thing in the world. I wouldn't call this super glassy. And so the fact that this, despite that lock bar pressure and that amount of subtle resistance, the fact that this can feel like it's being propelled open on its own accord is amazing. I'm trying to see how do I fail it? And the way that I fail it by flicking is basically keeping my finger in. The only way that I can get this to fail is by keeping my finger in and making it catch right there, which is not like a thing I would ever do except for intentionally. This is just so freaking cool. You know what I haven't even gotten to yet is that, yeah, right there. So underneath the foam pad in this thing, Kevin has included all of this stuff. So okay, that I should have looked at this at the beginning. Wow, I can't see my screen, so I'm probably like 20 minutes in, given how long I'm rambling. This is from April 21, and it's black Timascus. That's why you get those, because there's black Timascus and white Timascus, and that's what you get, these little black bits right there. And in addition to this really cute little sticker and that, but Kevin sent these. And this is one of every single kind of bearing that he has that he knows fits in it. We've got skiffs and Gillians and Delrens, and what's in it are those taco bearings. And he encouraged me to try them and see how they feel. You can see that some of these have significantly more detent balls than others, and so it'll be interesting. And then he also sent me a pair of skiffs, and I believe these are a pair of Delrens. I don't know bearings the way he does. That would fit into other knives of mine, specifically the haptic. And that is, yeah, right there, skiff and Delrens. And that is just, this is an incredibly Kevin thing to do because he is Mr. Bearings. But it's also just really, really cool that he knows I'm the type of person that wants to nerd out too and wants to try and see how and feel all the little differences. So thank you so much for sending these things along the way too. But holy crap, thank you for sending this around my way. This is, whew. The short version, my gut reaction is that I think this is living up to exactly what I thought it would be. Yeah. All of the little details, the way that this feels in hand, the actual, like, feeling of this is incredible. And the way that that happens is insane. And, I said last time he loaned me an incredibly expensive knife that I've been wanting to try for a really long time. Like, crap, I think I need one. And, I definitely need one. Problem is these things cost, 2.5 times markup on secondary. Yeah, it's really hard to fail it. You really have to shove your finger in and make it fail by stopping on your finger. This thing is incredible. Okay, I'm gonna stop rambling. I don't know. I can't see my screen. This is probably a half hour. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. And thank you again, Kevin.